as a part of the continuing college history dealing with Paducah Junior College, Paducah Community College. We're going to try to cover a period in the life of two individuals who have been closely associated with both institutions over the last 20 years. And it's something like Carl Becker mentioned in his presidential address to the American Historical Association in 1931, where he noted that history is the events and the things said in the past. And the events, once they've happened, can't be reconstructed. But what we're going to attempt to do today is to bring back the memory of those events and how they impacted upon the life of the institution. With me today we have Mr. Leon Williams, who is the chairman of the Paducah Junior College, Paducah Community College Board of Trustees, and has been in that position for some 20 years now. And also Dr. Donald J. Clemens, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the college and has served also in a position of executive leadership in both institutions, also for approaching 20 years. Mr. Williams, in this 20-year span that you have been on the board has gone through some rather dramatic rethinking of its role in relations to the institution. Would you care to comment on the events leading up to the merger and the transition of the board into its present status?
I think for some 2 or 3 years, beginning about '65, the board, which had been an autonomous board, a control board in every sense of the word since its beginning back in the '30s, began to realize that some change was going to occur in the institution. And one of those possibilities was that we would become part of the community college system, which would change the function of the local board. And it did. While we have remained very involved insofar as being informed, being aware of what's going on in the school, providing financial support for certain parts of the college, we no longer hire and fire faculty. We don't award degrees as we had previously. We have the biggest chore before us, I suppose, is to find a good working fit with the university in the interest of the student body to serve the youth of the area. So in that sense, our emphasis has changed a little. But we're still with the same end result purpose.
Well, the board has changed its composition too. There's been some change in membership. I believe when you first came on, there were members who had been there from the very first meeting, like Mr. Waller and others.
That's true.
But the merger also really, is this not a unique experience as far as a college system? Dr. Clemens, you've done some looking into this, I believe. Do you know of any other instance where a existing, say, a municipally supported college decided to merge with a state system?
No, I think that both either a municipal college or a public institution or a private institution that joined a state system, usually the total responsibility as far as governance, finance, and ownership would be transferred to the new organization, which of course normally we're talking about a state system. I think this is the only instance that I know of, and I have researched it, and I've inquired to colleagues at various meetings over the years, and I know the situation, but here in Paducah.
Mm-hmm. So really, this view of what happened here is a unique experience in higher education. The fact that we merged by contract, and each side had to feel out and develop new relationships. Well, Mr. Williams, when did you first come across Dr. Clemens?
I think the record indicates that Dr. Clemens came to PJC within a matter of a few months after I was named chairman, mid-1966. We were entering, all of education was entering a different period. Federal government began to make certain monies available for educational institutions, and a good deal of paperwork involved with this, specialized paperwork. Dean Matheson had some information that a bright young man with a fresh doctorate degree with some experience in this type of work was available, and Dr. Clemens came to our campus as a consultant first, to remain, as it turned out, although that wasn't in the cards necessarily at the time he first came.
Well, this role as a consultant, Dr. Clemens, you were actually then employed by Murray State University.
That's correct.
And you were lent to the college. Is that a rather commonplace occurrence?
No, and I think, as Mr. Williams pointed out, this was a new era for higher education, as it was for elementary and secondary. The federal government took a position for the first time in the history of the country to be funding grants, to be giving money to particular schools, whether it be elementary and higher education. And I came at I guess at the right time out of graduate school, and was the first person at Murray State who served as a liaison with the Department of Education, and first with the public in the public elementary and secondary, then later as a grants writer, writing for Murray State University, writing grants. And that's how Dr. Woods, who was then president of Murray State, through the offices of Dean Matheson, asked me to come up and meet with the president and meet with the administration and see if Paducah Junior College could qualify for this grant, which we now know as Higher Education Title III, which has been a friend of this institution almost the last 20 years, since it was enacted in 1966.
Well, one of the reasons we were able to qualify is that Murray State University was willing to serve as sort of what, the research institution?
Big brother.
Big brother. They were to supply technical expertise and also what, faculty when it would be necessary?
As I recall, Dr. Clemens would recall more specifically.
Yeah,
Exactly
that's interesting too, that the Title III has changed probably distinctly maybe 3 times and going through another change right now in its philosophy. But one of the original programs, as you're acquainted with, was what they call National Teaching Fellowship, where the grant would allow a bright young teacher just starting out to come to Paducah Junior College. And then a senior member of the staff, an excellent senior member of staff, such as you, John Robertson, went off and did advanced graduate study. And presently, I think of our faculty, without looking at the roster, I would say at least 10 people have been added to our ranks of faculty of outstanding qualified faculty members from this NTF program.
Well, this is one of the things that we when we came to the merger situation, I suspect this would cause some problems, would it not? The fact that you had an ongoing program involving federal funding.
This, of course, was one of the factors, and I believe we were a bit unique in that Paducah Junior College, as an institution, didn't disappear.
Mm-hmm.
It has a presence. And the peculiar arrangement was such that we could continue receiving grants. Now that would compare to the fact that one of the ordinary, I don't mean that as a put down, but a campus member of the community college system as they are normally found has no separate existence apart from the system. There isn't a local educational institution, a governing body. So it was an interesting piece of chemistry in that regard.
So the local control board did not disappear with the merger, but instead it had to assume a new role. I believe you also had to assume a new role somewhere during this period too, did you not, Dr. Clemens? When we began to come online, thinking about joining the university, you had come on originally as a consultant, and then from there you became actually associated, first of all, with Paducah Junior College.
That's correct. I think my first experience really with Mr. Williams and with the board was sitting in at the invitation of the president as a consultant, as a federal consultant, and answering questions relating to this grant. And John, you know, talking about Title III, I think that it is probably the beginnings that, plus of course the continued interest of a local board and the local funds, but the Title III money, only Paducah Junior College at that time was qualified to receive it. The University of Kentucky, and this is true with all federal funds, in the beginning, some institutions for various institutional philosophies resisted accepting federal funds. And at that time, the University of Kentucky was not receiving any federal funds. And the community college system, remember, was in its infancy,
Very new.
Began in 1964, was not qualified. So that was written in the contract. The board members had written that in, that Paducah Junior College was actually operating as a fiscal agent and receiving these federal funds because the University of Kentucky and the community college system was not qualified to receive them. So this was sort of the beginnings of this continual relationship.
Don, do I remember that the concept of Title III was to assist developing institutions, which we were, or
That's
we were
correct.
seen as, and that's the reason that the university would not have been a qualified recipient. It was considered already developed.
And so, and then you came in as consultant, and then from there you became academic dean?
Yes, during really the first year of my association with the institution, I became academic dean and was responsible for all the functions of the chief academic officer.
And as a part of the transition, there was another problem, I think, that developed. Of course, Dr. Robert Gordon Matheson, the president of Paducah Junior College, was over 65, I believe, at the time when the merger would take place.
That's correct.
And the university had a problem. I think it had something to do, well, with athletics perhaps, but they had a policy which required people in positions of administrative leadership to what, to step
retire.
down at 65?
That's, I think that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly before Dr. Clemens came as a consultant, of course, for a number of years, Dr. Matheson had been backed up, as it were, by Royce Gregory. I do not now recall how many years Royce was with the school, but a good many years. And on a day-to-day basis, he was Dean's right arm. He had, for whatever reasons, and they were wholesome, seen fit to take another opportunity. And partly because of the age that you mentioned, the institution was needing another good right arm. And Dr. Clemens had impressed the board as well as Dean during his period as a consultant that he'd make a good right arm. And then looking forward to the potential of the merger, a very good candidate to be the head man on the campus when Dean had to move into some other capacity because of the age problem. And that's exactly what did happen now, and he remains.
And so when you came on as president of Paducah Junior College, really you were on very unsure grounds, were you not, as far as a role to follow? The institution was in the process of changing. The responsibilities of the office would have to be redefined. I meant that would be a very traumatic experience to step into a position like that, facing not only a change in governing boards, but in your particular role in the administration.
John, I think all three of us know when you reflect 20 years ago, I think that's why young people should assume these positions and these situations. It was, but I think in the beginning, as is true now, I tried to have one philosophy, and that was what was best for the students of Paducah, whether it was Paducah Junior College or Paducah Community College. And I felt that whenever there was a conflict between what was best for the students at Paducah Community College, Paducah Junior College, and this of course includes the entire family, including faculty, that then I would have a dilemma. And I think over the years, through the support of a local board of trustees, by assisting with the implementation of our local funds, and then of course the experience of the University of Kentucky in operating the community college system, that there has not been a conflict. But yes, it was something that I think you had to have a ground level philosophy, and the basic principle was that I tried to do what was best for this Paducah institution. I did not concern myself with the community college system, but the Paducah College.
So you sort of had to walk a tightrope between the two demands.
We've many times mentioned Don's wearing two hats. So far as the university system is concerned, when they, upon a recommendation or a request of the local board, did hire Dr. Clemens as the first director, he was then an employee of the community college system. Now, I suppose that you could say there was a pattern for his job in that capacity because there were existing campuses, and at least I'm sure the university system had an idea what his job specifications were. But he was carrying over as the principal officer of Paducah Junior College. He was serving as, and continued to, as recording secretary for the board, PJC, Board of Trustees, for all the years up to the time that and the Community College Advisory Board were merged into one, which means there was a period of time in there when there were actually two boards. And Dr. Clemens would find himself having to work with that board. Perhaps that was eased some due to the fact that during most of those years, some members were on both boards. So it wasn't a totally different panel.
The two boards you're talking about were the advisory board for Paducah Community College, which had no function other than advising.
That's correct.
And all the community colleges had these boards, which were
by
appointed
statute.
by the governor?
Yes, by statute.
All right. And the Paducah Junior College, the unique thing here is that it continued to exist. It had a local tax base.
That's correct.
And it also had a function that could make recommendations as to how, for example, to enrich programs and...
well, it was contracting party to the contract. And Dr. Clemens, in being a voice, if you will, many times for the local board and also an employee of the university, had to be very careful that he wasn't trying to row in both directions at the same time. And yet there's a cooperative attitude from both contracting parties, the university and the local board, with an objective that, in the language of the contract, we locally were concerned, and the university, I think, was dedicated to see that happen, that we wound up with some plus programs, that there be a little more educational opportunity here than would have existed were it not for this unusual combination. And I'm certain that Dr. Clemens was dedicated to that concept, as was each of the local board members. But people being what they are, situations could arise where perhaps his immediate superior to the university system might not think he's doing all he could upon behalf of that system, and we locally might think he's not doing all that he could on this. That's the tightrope.
But I believe, Dr. Clemens, you said that one time that the two boards really began to meet as one.
Yes, John, before I respond to that, I think there's something that we're right on the edge of and we're not really talking about, which I think is very important. And that is that when we became part of the community college system, we were receiving a local support tax. And local support tax was to give the students of Paducah and McCracken County, our sport district, something a little bit extra. And I think that was the biggest challenge I had beside operating within the local community college and yet an employee of a university 260 miles away, was developing a program with state funds and then with enrichment funds and many, many programs. Our nursing program was enriched, our data processing program. This studio here we're in has been financed through the local sport tax and enrichment funds.
I believe you also said that the data processing program at Paducah Community College was the first of its kind and only made possible, was it not?
That's correct. We had the first two-year program in the state, and that was through the assistance of our Title III grant in 1969, and then later on through support of local funds. And I think that that since we have a chairman of the Board of Trustees who is completing his 20th year, I need to do it as succinctly, as honestly, and as unemotional as I can. But working with him for 20 years, he's the only chairman I've known, and he's been my advisor, he's been my confidant, and he's been my teacher. Without his support, and people like him on the Board of Trustees, but I'm singling him out because he has been the chairman who's held the board together. We could not have had the programs we have today, and many times they're unsung heroes because they come out here once a month, many hours spent on the telephone, many hours in meetings, but the community sees you and I, and they see me as the person that is directing these programs. But people like Mr. Williams put many, many hours in without pay. At least you and I do get paid.
Well, I appreciate those compliments, Don, but I thought it was occurring to me that during these years of making happen what was envisioned in the contract, for a great period of time, probably you singularly were aware of local finances available and those that came down through the university. The university didn't know about the local finances, and we didn't know about the university's finances. And you being able to see both sources and knowing what the intention was that we wanted to accomplish, were able to tell the local board how these funds could be best used to accomplish that. I appreciate, and I'm sure the board would, your fine words about our accomplishments, but and I don't mean this just to turn this into a mutual admiration society. But yours was no doubt the more demanding chore because of being in the middle, and the university had to have great confidence in you, and I think the local board had to have great confidence in you in those developing periods in there to make this blend occur in the best way possible. Don didn't say this to you, but in connection with some of the programs, we were in another transition period. All community colleges, well, the concept of community college was a transition from the concept of junior college, which basically had a college transfer program. And the community college concept adds to that two-year terminal technical program with which PJC had little, if any, experience. And this was a period of developing these programs. Don used some of the local funds, as has been pointed out, in beginning the data processing program. We were early into, we were in the nursing program before the contract,
Yes,
which
that
was our
only
first
program.
two-year
That's right.
technical program of any magnitude. Now, during the early merger years, local funds were used to make that a much stronger program than it might otherwise be. It still probably stands as the flagship
Yes.
in this sort of training. Don had to decide where he could use this money the best. And many times he used it, as he often used the term, as seed money to get a program commenced, financed by local funds that later the cost was absorbed by the university's budget or the community college system budget. And then we'd use some of the local money to start another seed program. I've lost count of how many of those are. Don probably knows because he lived with it on a day in, day out basis.
And in light of what Mr. Williams is saying is that this seed money or startup money got the program operational, and then the university through state funds have picked it up. So we've used this really part of a plan, which we, as you know, we call our 5-year plan, where the sources or funds of money are incidental. It's to plan the program first. I left you a little bit in the air. You asked me a question, and I wanted to be sure that I referred to the board, but you were
I was
speaking
thinking
about both
about
boards.
the final, the board coming together in its present form. The advisory board merged into it by, how was that done, by state law?
That's fact.
Yes.
A little bit of historical background on that. As a matter of fact, the advisory board may at some time have had a meeting on its own, but most of the time it met with the PJC board, and even those who were not also PJC board members would sometimes lose sight that they were non-voting members so far as PJC was concerned. But the two were so merged in effort that finally the time came that, and I don't recall right now who conceived the idea, that we asked the legislature to modify that part of the statute setting up advisory boards to make an exception in the case of, and then the description described an institution such as ours under the municipal community college or municipal junior college section, that in that case then the local board would serve as. So it's in that framework that it's merged.
Well, sort of going back and looking over this period, the 20 years that you two have collectively, each of you during this 20-year time, have given to Paducah Junior College, Paducah Community College. It must have been a very challenging period. It must have been one demanding a great deal of innovation, being flexible. Would you perhaps, in the few minutes we have left, talk about what would you think would be the most demanding involvement that you've had with the institution? Could we start with you, Mr. Williams?
I think the most demanding situation was to make certain that we didn't make a mistake for the wrong reason. The vote by the PJC board to enter into a contractual arrangement was 8-7. That's hardly a landslide.
Right.
And there probably were various reasons that it was that close. The reasons doubtless included a certain amount of suspicion. I think there's a lot of contracting in which the contracting parties have some reservations and they're not real sure that the other side is going to live up to all that's promised. And quite possibly some of that existed here. Now, for the operation to work, as much of this suspicion as possible needs to be set aside so that we concentrate on the positives and not on the negatives, and be quite honest about it. From time to time over the years, certain proposals come up, they're calling for the local board to provide money, and you'll get comments from various board members, why isn't that the university's responsibility? So it's been very challenging to deal with these situations, and sometimes not knowing everything that, as is seen from both sides, to go ahead with the program without being too concerned about that. And now that's a practical challenge, I think.
Dr. Clemens, what did you see yours most challenging?
Well, I think in reflecting over it, I think the most difficult challenge I had from the beginning was to develop with the faculty sound educational programs to present to the Board of Trustees for these local funds. And I can recall over the years, this was the most difficult because all of us know, I won't say all of us, but hopefully many of us have an experience in a lifetime that have some money and have difficulty spending it. And spending it wisely, I guess I need to qualify. So this over the years has been a challenge, and Mr. Williams, I think that the biggest amount of success I had is when he finally said, you're spending all the money. The other, I guess I can sum up my job in saying that when I speak to my colleagues, I've said this has been an educator's dream, but an administrator's nightmare. And I think that probably sums up my role as being director for the university, and also working very closely with the local board of trustees.
Well, for our next session, we'll try to look into the plan that you set for the development of the campus, and over the 20-year period of your tenure, how you have taken this plan through until it is essentially complete. So we thank you two for being with us, and thank you very much. Good evening.